Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for this video, I'm going to be discussing Stephen King books that need sequels. So of course, none of these books are ever going to get sequels, I'm fairly sure. I mean, obviously he did Doctor Sleep, which everyone was very surprised when that came out, because that was the sequel to The Shining, which The Shining came out in the 70s, and then Doctor Sleep came out, like almost 40 years later. That surprised a lot of people. And now he's even talking about a sequel to Cujo, not like a novel, but in his upcoming collection of short stories, You Like It Darker, there will be a sequel to Cujo. Now, what that's going to look like, I have no idea, but it is pretty interesting. And also, I forgot to hold up the book the entire time. So there will be somewhat of a sequel to Cujo, and this did get me thinking, which Stephen King books would I like to see sequels from? Because there is definitely one. There's one specific one that I'll talk about here first that I'm dying to get a sequel from, because it just ends in a way where kind of like The Shining, where you're just like, okay, where did this person leave off in, like, maybe into adulthood? Like, what does their life look like now? And I'll get into that. That'll probably be the first book that I talk about. And then these other ones are sequels, or they're books that I would love to see sequels from. I'm not exactly sure how that would work or what direction they would go in, but I would just love to get more from that story, or maybe just from like specific characters. And I know none of these books are probably ever going to get sequels, but I would love sequels for these books. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So first off, the book that I was alluding to, the Stephen King book that I most want to see a sequel from is Firestarter. And this is very similar in the vein of The Shining, where, Stephen King wrote The Shining in the 70s, and then years later he thought, what is Danny Torrance up to as an adult? And then he wrote an entire book about that. And it was really good, in my opinion. I know some people don't love it, but I love Doctor Sleep. And then Firestarter also, surprising no one, has a kid character with supernatural powers. And obviously Firestarter, Charlie McGee, girl can light shit on fire with her mind. Really cool. And also just one of my all-time favorite Stephen King books, like just outside of my top 10, probably top 15 or so. I love this book. And I'm not going to spoil it, but, Charlie does live. And I do want to, I just want to know what she's up to. Because the way the book ends, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to spoil it, but I want to see where her life goes from that point. And I want the sequel really badly, is what I'm trying to say. And also, when the Institute came out, and that was supposed to be about, this kind of secret government agency stealing kids in the middle of the night who have supernatural powers, I thought that was going to be a quasi sequel to Firestarter, but it wasn't. And that's kind of why that book disappointed me a little bit. But man, do I want a sequel to Firestarter, and man, do I want to know what Charlie McGee is up to. I guess going forward for all of these books, I guess I can put up like a minor spoiler tag, because if I'm talking about sequels, I guess I will kind of be delving into who lives in these books. Like I just mentioned, Charlie McGee lives. So keep that in mind. There will be minor spoilers for characters that I want to see further their stories. So keep that in mind while you're watching this video. I guess with this book, it's going to be really hard for me to talk about why I would want a sequel without just going into spoilers. So I'm just going to give full spoiler warning for Pet Sematary, but I would like a sequel to Pet Sematary, even though I do have kind of a ranty video about why I think this book is overrated. I don't hate it. I gave it 3 stars. I think it's good, but it's nowhere near my top 10. But I would be very interested to get a sequel because I want to know how messed up the daughter's life is now. Ellie Creed, because man, she has had a weird childhood from this book. You know, like she had, you know, just even the cat coming back to life, and then, you know, her brother getting run over by a car, and then just her mother being very very weird, you know, understandably about death, and just I want to see how messed up her life is. That's basically why I want a sequel to Pet Sematary. I would also really, really want a sequel to The Eyes of the Dragon. Now, if you haven't read this book before, it's very different from normal Stephen King books, if that even is a thing. This is kind of a standalone fantasy novel, kind of like a YA fantasy before that was even really a thing. He originally wrote this for his daughter, so it's not the same kind of vibe, I guess you could say, that a normal Stephen King book has. But I think it's really good. I think it's a really interesting take on just writing a fantasy standalone. I really like it. It's one of my favorites. But the way that it ends is kind of open-ended. It doesn't have like everything's wrapped up in a neat little bow. The way that it ends, you get some sort of conclusion, but also at the same time, it definitely leads into a potential sequel that he obviously just never wrote or got around to. And I'm always very interested to see, like, you know, maybe he thought about writing a sequel for this, but it just didn't pan out. Or maybe he was just like, nope, this is good, done. I don't know. I'd love to ask him, but man, like I said, the way that this book ends, I really want a sequel. I really want to know what happens. I think for this next book, I don't necessarily want a sequel. I know a lot of people want a sequel, but I think for this one, I would much rather have a prequel. And of course, I'm talking about It. And if you know anything about It, the entity, you know, like known as Pennywise, he kind of cycles through, it's like 27 years. Like every 27 years, he kind of pops around and, you know, does his thing. And the book, if you haven't read it before, it's kind of written that way, where you have some chapters and perspectives that are written in the 50s, and then flash forward and back between the 50s and then the 80s, 27 years apart. What I would really want to see is not the 50s and 80s, but even before that. Like, what the hell was Pennywise up to in the 30s, you know, like, or even in the 1800s? I think that would be pretty cool. I don't necessarily want to go as far back as his origin, necessarily, because that's probably way, way far back. But I would love to see what the hell he was up to before the events of this book. This next book is probably, I know this will never happen, probably, but this is probably the second most requested for me that I would want to see. Like Firestarter, like I want that like tomorrow or yesterday. But this next book I think would be really fun as a sequel, and that would be Needful Things. And if you've read this, or if you haven't read this book, it's about this guy who moves into Castle Rock, named Leland Gaunt, and he opens up a shop. But the weird thing about this shop is that he doesn't, he gets people in his store that really wants his items from the store, but he doesn't charge money for them. He asks specific favors. And basically the idea is that he's trying to pin everyone against each other by, it starts off very benign, like, oh, do this little prank, and then that leads to this, and that leads to that. And all of a sudden, the whole town is against each other. And it's very good. And I guess this is a minor spoiler, but what I would want for a sequel is for Leland Gaunt, for Stephen King to take that idea of Leland Gaunt coming into a town, but have it in modern day, just to see the differences. Because this book was written in the early 90s, but obviously before a lot of technology we have today. So I think the differences in that would be very interesting. Like, how would Leland Gaunt necessarily even get away with a lot of this stuff. And, you know, people filming on iPhones and having drones everywhere. Like, I don't know. I think just thinking about how Leland Gaunt would deal with that, and maybe having a bit more of a difficult time with that, I think is a very interesting thought. So I would love a sequel to Needful Things. This next one, I would like a sequel from, but I'm also scared that if he wrote it, it wouldn't be as good as the book. And it wouldn't even necessarily have to be a novel. Like, it could just be like a short story or novella. But essentially, I want to know what Dolores Clayborn is up to as an elderly person. That's essentially, because I mean, I love this book. I recently redid my top 10 list, and this is now firmly in my top 10. I love this book. I love Dolores Clayborn. And basically, I just want more Dolores, because this book is literally just her narrating the whole time. So I would love to get Dolores's reaction to maybe just modern day stuff. And again, just like Needful Things, this was written in the early 90s. And a lot of this book does take place like then, and then also in the 70s and before that. So it would be interesting to pin, you know, Dolores Clayborn like in modern day, or at least like even somewhere in the 2000s, just to get her reaction to everything, because she is a very funny character. So just overall, I just want more Dolores. That'll probably never happen, but it would be a lot of fun. And kind of in the same vein as wanting just more of the character of Dolores Clayborn, I would love a sequel or prequel, probably a sequel, to Duma Key, one of my all-time favorites. I think it's like number 6 for me all time. And the main reason why I love this book so much is the friendship between two characters, Edgar Fremantle and Wireman. Their connection, their friendship is amazing. One of my favorite friendships in all of fiction. So getting a sequel to this, and just, it doesn't even have to be a novel, because they've gone through enough. And even just like a short story of them, or maybe they even pop up in another book or story. I just want more of their friendship, because this book is just amazing, and I love those two characters together. This next book I have to talk about is the most recent that I have to talk about in this video, and that would be Later by Stephen King. And if you haven't heard of this one, or if you haven't read it yet, it's essentially about this young boy named Jamie who can see dead people. And very similar, well, not very, but it is a similar concept to The Sixth Sense, where, you know, this boy can see dead people. It's executed very differently, though, and I love the way that King, like, there's a lot of rules and stuff to it. I don't know. It's very fascinating. I really liked this really short book. I think this was published in like 2021, very recently, and I just want to see more of what Jamie is up to. Maybe even Jamie as an adult, because I think the way that this book is written, like, it's written as if he's reminiscing on his past. So maybe getting like how Jamie responds to what he can do as an adult, and see how that follows him through adulthood, I think would be pretty fascinating. I doubt he would ever do it. You know, like, Stephen King just really doesn't write sequels very often. I don't know. I would just like to see Jamie dealing with seeing dead people as an adult. All right, this last book, or should I say series, is kind of, I don't know. Like, I want more of the story, but at the same time, I don't want King to mess it up, if that makes any sense. I'll just spill the beans here. We're talking about The Dark Tower here. So I would love prequels for The Dark Tower, because there are stories to be told. Like, the Battle of Jericho Hill is something in Roland's past that's mentioned and that's talked about, but to get like even like a novella of that would be very cool. And just Dark Tower stories in general. Sequels, though, are very tricky, and I'm not going to even talk about it here of why that would be tricky, because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But basically, the ending to The Dark Tower is amazing. I know some people don't like it, but generally, Dark Tower fans think it's brilliant. I agree. And writing a sequel would probably diminish that ending. And I don't want that unless it's executed perfectly, which I doubt Stephen King could do. So I don't necessarily want a sequel, but it would be very cool to have prequel stuff with Roland or even prequel stuff with other characters like Eddie. You know, like we get Eddie in the second book. It would be fun to see his life or just adventures before Roland enters his life. And yeah, just stuff like prequels to the Dark Tower would be very fun. A sequel would be very tricky, and I'm not really sure if I necessarily want that, even though it would be very interesting. I doubt King would nail it, and I doubt it would be anywhere near close to as good as the actual ending to the Dark Tower series. All right, so those are all the Stephen King books that I would love sequels and or prequels to. I know probably none of these would ever happen. I'm still holding out hope for Firestarter because I really want a sequel to Firestarter. And also one for Needful Things would be very fun. I doubt it would ever happen, but it'd be a lot of fun. I wouldn't be surprised if he did something related to it. I doubt he would do a sequel, but maybe a prequel. I don't know. And then a lot of these other ones are just far-fetched, like Pet Cemetery. I don't think so. Dark Tower could get like Battle of Jericho Hill would be very fun. Later, probably not. Dolores, that's a long shot. What else do I have here? What else? Duma Key, I would not put money on that. Eyes of the Dragon would be so cool. That's like in my top 3 of like books that I actually want sequels from. But oh man, yeah, those are Stephen King books that I would love to see prequels or sequels. Just, and a lot of these are just because of the characters, because Stephen King is such a good character writer that I would just love to get more of that character or a handful of characters. And then other times it's just like plot based, like where is this person going to be in 20 or 30 years, or what are they going to look like as an adult? What are they up to right now? I don't know. It's that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching, and definitely comment down below which Stephen King books you would love sequels from. Do you agree with any of my list? Do you completely disagree and you're just like, these books should just stay as standalones or they're fine as they are? Or are there any other ones that I didn't mention that you would love to see sequels from? Comment down below. I read all of the comments. I try to reply to as much as possible. So definitely do that, and we'll have a conversation, and it'll be fun. And again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please, like I said, comment down below, like and subscribe. I also have the Book Astronomer Discord, where we have the Stephen King Short Story Book Club. We're also going to be buddy reading his newest book, You Like It Darker, in May. So if you want to join us for that, link down below. I also have my Patreon page down below if you want to support me there, and my Amazon wish list if you'd like to purchase me a book. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a fantastic day.